morning, Dion. How are you?
Good morning, Zuki. How are you doing? Good, good, good. I'm as good and sane as one can be locked down.
But I can imagine your mind is probably the most sought after mind right now.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say I see other people on social media baking sourdough bread, signing for online weaving classes, whatever. Like that's not my life. I'm like I don't know, what's happened. But so I'm very, very thankful that things are really, really busy.
Yeah,
Mostly trying to recalibrate my own business,
yeah.
and then also trying to help other people or clients recalibrate their businesses as well.
Which should be quite easy for you. I mean, in my eyes, and you know, I'm a big fan of your work. You've been doing trend analysis, strategic consulting for over 12 years now.
Yes, yes. I always jokingly say I started a trends company before trends were trendy, and then it became very trendy. So you got to keep ahead of it all the time. So yeah.
And you're the master of reinvention, so this time should be relatively easier on you than most people because you've been ahead of the curve for so long.
Well, I think what's really interesting about this time is, and I don't want to say it, but it's on the tip of your tongue all the time. It's like, I told you so. I told you.
I must say, I'm tempted to say it all the time, but and I think it's not in a bad way. But to be honest, though, did you see it coming?
Well, I didn't. I mean, I didn't see the pandemic coming, but 2020 was always going to be this watershed year. It's going to be a landmark year. A lot of tech companies said we'll have this tech available by 2020. The companies that are still saying we will have digital transformation by 2020. So 2020 was going to be this really significant year. We just, there was going to be winds of change. We didn't really think there was going to be a hurricane that came our way for 2020. But be careful what you wish for, because it is a remarkable watershed year. Yeah.
And for some people, it is incredibly scary because I think just at the pace at which, the watershed moment happened. But for other people, it is also exciting because you get to shed a lot of fat and access and really get to reinvent and start anew. Would that be fair to say?
I think it's a double-edged sword, because I think exactly what you said. There's people that get very excited about this. There's people like us that have been kind of saying, there is a new world order coming. It's things have got to change, and now people are being forced into it. So those that have been reluctant to kind of embark on the change are now being literally pushed over the cliff to say there's no option now.
What is happening right now? Because a lot of people are saying, change is here. We're not going back. We talk about new normals, but what does that even mean?
I think the blind spot that I'm picking up, so everybody's focused on the business models and seeing what's happening. What people, for me, are missing is that everybody sitting at home in lockdown is having their own little existential crisis. And for me, that's a good thing, because you're going to start rethinking about what's important in life. And I think what's important, especially if you're talking in terms of careers and work, and that's where it intersects, is people's personal lives with your work life, is that crisis usually becomes as a midlife crisis or older in life, where you think, my time's running out, I want to do things now, and now is the time to do it. There's no tomorrow. There's, don't delay it anymore. And I think to a large extent, obviously not everybody, but a large percentage of people are going to be rethinking that and saying, gosh, what do I want to do in this as I'm going forward?
Searching for meaning, right? What does it all mean? Do you really need a bag for 50,000 Rand? Do you need a luxury vehicle? Do you need, we haven't spent our money on anything in over a month.
No, I think one of the biggest things is obviously, because it's human nature, you want that human contact, you want to socialize, you want to go out, you want to see people, see your family, give them a physical hug. But in the same light, exactly that, you've kind of found out that, okay, getting a bit edgy because my wine supply is running a bit low, but it's like, okay, it's not going to be the end of the world, So you really reshift your thinking, and things become a little bit clearer, a bit more focused, and you're saying, okay, let's do that. So once that workforce and everybody goes back to work, I think there is going to be subtle or not so subtle change in people's outlook of what do they want to do with the future.
And I mean, that's very exciting for me. But the question is, will companies be ready to receive people that have this renewed outlook and a sense of purpose? Why am I doing this? You know, what is the impact? What is the true result of what I'm doing?
Yeah, I think it'll start off slowly, because I think the things that we've kind of realized is, yeah, all of those meetings that could have been emails are emails. All of those meetings, you know, driving across town, spending an hour driving an hour back for an hour meeting, that's 3 hours out of your day, is very easily done on Zoom or Skype or you know, a virtual way of doing things. So these ingrained habits are going to stick. So it's, you know, the same we're consulting in terms of retail, the online shopping, the e-commerce. That's going to be an ingrained behavior that you're thinking, okay, it does work, and we can go forth with that. So once those things start happening, and I think also companies now are really forced to make those changes. So leadership is ultra important now, because you're going to have to make decisions really quickly, and they are big shifting decisions to be able to do that. You know, how does the workforce come in 3 different shifts during the day, or 4 different shifts during the day? How do you stagger that? How does the productivity work in terms of that? How does the spacing within offices work? So if that first shift is there and the 4th shift is still working at home, you know, the companies then have to divert budget to give them access to fiber, to connectivity devices, all of those kind of things. Everything is kind of changed and recalibrated for this.
And as we know, there would be a lot of companies that are also right sizing, right? And for me, the thing that becomes important and relevant is those who do remain within the workforce. What should they be thinking about in terms of skills and careers?
It will be a trickle down effect, because if you're going to right size, as you said, and you're going to now, I mean, this is why I'm kind of smiling inside, is because this is, you know, I talk about scaling innovation in large companies all the time, and that's kind of what I do at business colleges, and we talk about what are the impediments and why doesn't innovation scale? Now companies are forced to innovate. It's not a kind of a nice to have. You got to make a plan, and you got to make a plan really fast. And then in that innovation process, I think one of the things that I hope gets through to that kind of leadership is what bubbles or creates innovation is that every voice is valuable. You start getting input from everyone, no matter what their position. Fundamentally, innovation is about disrupting the status quo. Yeah. And you cannot disrupt the status quo with old ideas and the same lens. You've got to have eyes of a child, and that, okay, we can do this differently. We can do this a different way. And it's to draw on those sources of inspiration and innovation, and then see within that older framework what you can implement and how and what the timelines are to implement that.
Right, and the minute you say that let go of the old, I think the older generation is likely to think, but you're asking me to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but all of this institutional wisdom is responsible for our success up until this point. And as you said, what I love is that, you know, look at your business through the eyes of a child. At my academy, we run a boot camp called Intergenerational Vibes. And it's exactly about that disrupt from the bottom up. In other words, your youngest workforce, because they are ultimately the future customer or future current. Yes. They are the customer. And my thought about that, firstly, let's define Gen Z. What is Gen Z? Which generation is it?
Very roughly speaking, your oldest Gen Zs have already come of age, so 21, 22, sort of maybe outer limits, even 23. Yeah. Your youngest one is just coming into puberty, 20. So basically your adolescence of this decade. And the reason why I think they're important, because I started tracking them before they started coming of age, like 5 years ago already. Yeah. But what is significant and what you remind people of is, if we in 2020 and you look at things in terms of decades, basically, if your Gen Zs are coming of age in 2020, by 2030, within this next decade, they are fully your customer. They are fully your main entry-level workforce. And the way in which, and we mustn't forget that they're also the first generation of true digital natives. So they will understand. That's what I'm saying. Have you asked a young person about the UX of your system? Does it make sense? Is it seamless? Is it on demand? Is it, all of those kind of things? You can learn that kind of stuff from them. But going back to what you're saying about when people say, yeah, but we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, then I go back to the whole thing of you have to have, and you should have been doing this for the past 5 years, is ambidextrous leadership. So what I mean by ambidextrous leadership is every single company, no matter what sector, is trying to do two things. You are trying to bring in a new system, a new technology, a new generational workforce, and you're trying to retain institutional memory. So it's a really difficult challenge, but it is what every business leader needs to do, and you need to try and converge those very, very slowly or quickly in this case to make things work. And what the pandemic has done has propelled the speed of that stuff. So a lot of the concepts, remote working, the technologies, all of those kind of things that have been sort of standing in the sideline have all been pushed forward.
It's been, but that's important. Like it's not new. It's been in the pipeline. It's been coming. It's just now only coming to the forefront, and it's feeling brand new for a lot of people that have been skirting on the edges of it. But back to Gen Z, you wrote a very interesting piece that you called, what did you call it? Gen Z versus boomers?
The Zoomers versus the boomers. I smell a revolution coming.
I loved that. I absolutely loved that. Can you tell us what was in that piece?
Okay, so we're gonna take a step back. The reason why I call them the Zoomers, and that's ZOOM.
Oh yeah, please.
So the Gen Zs themselves, the teenagers, have been self-deprecating and calling themselves the Zoomers because for Generation Z, so Zoomers.
Yeah.
But the name has become literal and stuck because they were very proficient on a platform like Zoom. So they knew the ins and outs of it anyway. So now the Z now stands for Zoomers and then the boomers. In my article, I was saying the reason why I said I smell a revolution coming is this is a disjoint or a separation of two polar opposite generations that is going to be cleaved even wider with this pandemic. And there's a lot of different touch points with that. So we start off with I call her the Marmite effect. Greta Thunberg, you love her, you hate her. There's no between. But that's she's I called her the Joan of Arc of Gen Z's generation, because she was that, and actually Joan of Arc was also about that age as a very, very young female soldier, and she basically her strike for climate change resonated around the world. She got all of these teenagers to strike, to get on the streets, all of those kind of things. And this has just slowly started to kind of build up. And what this pandemic is going to do is on the everyone said, yeah, it's brought everyone together. And I'm saying, no, it's also called the pandemic of hate because, there's xenophobia has increased. There's geopolitics is going to get really messy. There's the blame game. There's, I love the word Time Magazine that said the politics of generosity and mask diplomacy of who's supplying what essential services. But what's come out of that is the highlighting of inequalities. And we've seen it around the world, minority groups in every country, whether they're Asian, whether they're Black, there's a more higher death rate in those populations and lower income families as well. So if you don't have healthcare, that's why they're calling this the rich person's disease, because it's spread very quickly by international flight. And if you have healthcare, you have a better chance of surviving this kind of thing. So those things and where the money gets allocated, for healthcare, all of those kind of things are all of the rallying cries that Gen Z have already been on. It's about, global solidarity. It's about climate change. It's about inequality. It's about acceptance. It's about identity. It's all of those things. And this pandemic has really just highlighted all of their touch points. So once they come out of that, and believe me, the climate change discussion was reaching a tipping point in 2019. and it's been pushed aside for a while. But when this pandemic, we finally get a vaccine and it starts easing, the links also between the kind of the pandemic, the corporate greed, the lifestyles, all of this kind of stuff that we're saying, you're having this existential crisis at home, kind of all plays into what Gen Z have been advocating all along. It's just a gentler way of life. It's more accepting. It's a different type of capitalism. It's climate change. It's all of those kind of things. So that revolution is for me, is brewing, and the pandemic is just going to give them an excuse to point to the Zoom, to the boomers, and say, "We told you so."